Playwright Anton Chekhov famously said, "Never place a loaded rifle on stage if it isn't going to go off." In other words, every detail must be relevant, and every setup should have a payoff. Thus, the narrative principle of Chekhov's gun was born. But it isn't always a gun. Chekhov's Whatever is a podcast where myself and guests watch a movie and try to predict what role Chekhov's gun will play. Welcome to Chekhov's Whatever. Hello and welcome to Chekhov's Whatever, the podcast that makes a game of movies and storytelling. I'm your host, Meg Mazeski. Here with me today to discuss the 2025 sci-fi psychological thriller Companion is Diana Rojek-Skonnord. Welcome back, Diana.
In order to establish a podcast link, please put your face 3 inches away from the microphone.
I'm flattered. I don't know if I want to rush into a love link with you.
I said podcast link.
Oh, podcast link. Okay. Then yes, I will put my face 3 feet in front of the webcam.
Thank you for having me, Meg.
Yes, Diana, you are the first of the illustrious Two-Timers Club.
Woo!
Yes, the first person to be on here twice. Welcome back. Diana was the host of the Happily Ever Aftermath podcast, which was a romance movie podcast. Diana, why don't you tell the listeners a little bit more about the podcast and yourself?
Oh, sure. So Happily Ever Aftermath was a podcast where we discuss the movies that influence the way we view love and romance. And honestly, looking back on what influenced us, we actually probably needed to undo some of that influence that we had. And I myself am a podcast guest as a hobby now, until I decide to start another podcast. And I got a great dog named Pepper and a husband named Ryan, who was my co-host for a period. But I'm also going to acknowledge Paulina, who was, founding member of Hemcast. And that's, did I do a good? Did I tell the listeners everything they need to know?
You did a good, yes. But, between the concept of your original podcast and today's movie, I feel like I really should have timed this episode better to come out before Valentine's Day instead of shortly after Valentine's Day. But you live and you learn, I suppose.
I mean, if we were able to plan that well, I don't know.
Yes, so Diana joined me for episode 2 to talk about the movie Hitman. But today we are talking about Companion. Companion is a 2025 sci-fi thriller, and I would also classify it as a dark comedy. The synopsis says, a weekend getaway with friends at a remote lake house turns into chaos after it's revealed that one of the guests is not what they seem. So this is what I would call the spoiler-free synopsis. Here is the spoiler-full synopsis, also another official synopsis. A weekend getaway turns bloody and violent when a subservient android that's built for human companionship goes haywire. I think this is a good point to ask you, how much did you know about the premise of the movie before you saw the movie?
So I saw the first trailer that came. I think it was the first trailer. I'm going to claim it was the first trailer. And so I knew the scene where something has gone awry. So Guillermo from What We Do in the Shadows was in there. So I'm just like, all right, I'm halfway there, movie. Tell me more about your premise.
I'm sold.
Well, actually, I was sold when, there's a part where he said, like, you mean to tell me you hijacked your robot? And I imagine they changed it because I just rewatched the movie and he said sexbot. So I'm already like throwing all this stuff out here at once here. But the fact that you could see I saw the scene where Iris has run away with a bloody shirt on and Guillermo is on the phone and someone's trying to say like, wait, that she is just walking
Yes.
away. He's like, no, honey, I'm on the phone. And then I was just in. So I came into there knowing the robot premise. And I guess if I were writing this, it's, and then chaos ensues.
Yes. I had a slightly different experience going into it. I had seen the teaser trailer, the very initial trailer that was maybe like a minute and a half. And this was less explicit in its premise. It didn't say anything about robots. It didn't spell out that she was an android.
Okay.
But of course, the movie's called Companion. And I saw the posters where her eyes are whited out.
Yeah.
So going into it, I'm like, okay, she's a robot. I feel like it was purposefully made obvious for the audience. And also, I think the movie makers didn't want a Mean Girls on their hands, which is to say a lot of people went into Mean Girls not expecting a musical. And then when it was a musical, everyone was like, whoa, hit the brakes. What the hell is going on? So I think the movie makers sold what it is, which is it's a movie about a robot. So sure, it might have been better if the surprise were still there for the audience, but also the twist comes so soon in the movie that it's not the end all be all of the movie. So I think whether you knew she's a robot going in or didn't, I think you would still enjoy the movie relatively the same amount.
Oh, well, I agree. And I would say that there's so much going on in this movie. Her being a robot is the beginning of
Yes,
things.
it's the setup for the movie. It's not like the climax of the movie.
And I was this close to creating an experiment where I'm just like, Brian, I want to go see this movie, and then don't tell him the premise and then see what, he would be paying attention to relatively. But I just blurted out like, well, okay, so blah, blah, blah in Android. You want to go see this with me?
It was very clear that the couple sitting next to me in the movie theater, he knew what was going on. His date, however, was very surprised.
Nice.
So I loved that for her personally. But yes, I just wanted to lay the groundwork for that at the top of the episode before we get into the movie, because I do think it informs the movie right from the get-go before you even get your butt in the theater seat. And as you said, this movie stars Harvey Guillen, also Sophie Thatcher, Jack Quaid, and Lucas Gage. It was written and directed by Drew Hancock, and this was actually his directorial debut. It currently has a 94% critic score on Rotten Tomatoes and an 89% audience score, so pretty respectable. So beyond the whole robot thing, did you have any other expectations for this movie? I feel like it's a little outside of your typical wheelhouse.
Well, part of the trailer said from the creators of Barbarian, and
Yes.
I had to speak to my trusted friend Meg and ask, Meg, you saw Barbarian? Should I see Companion?
And I was like, you should definitely not see Barbarian. Okay, so I want to talk about this as well. I feel like this was a little bit of false advertising.
Mm-hmm.
It was from the directors of Barbarian in the sense that the writer and director of Barbarian produced Companion.
Okay.
And had I known that, I would have been even more excited to see Companion, because honestly, I didn't like Barbarian that much.
Mm-hmm.
I thought it was very gross and also so off the rails that it kind of lost me. Knowing that it was from, quote unquote, the creators of Barbarian, I'm sure was a selling point for other people. It wasn't for me. And once I realized it was, in fact, a different writer and director, I was like, okay, good, actually. I'm more excited about seeing this movie. But all that being said, I was intrigued.
Yeah.
I love me a robot movie. I really like Jack Quaid as Boimler in Star Trek Lower Decks.
Okay.
I love that role for him. And yeah, I just thought it looked like a fun robot movie.
I said I was sold on the trailer of just like, okay, the beats of the humor feel good, but this is about 2.5 minutes that they're showing me right now. So I proceed with caution. Oh, Barbarian. Okay, well, take a chance, Diana. Ooh, 93% on Rotten Tomatoes at the time of me seeing it. Okay, I'm in.
Yes. But before we really dive into Companion, here's a quick overview of how Chekhov's Whatever works. This is a podcast where myself and the lovely guest watch and review a movie that's new to us. We also play a game where we try to guess what Chekhov's gun will be and how it will play out later in the movie. Chekhov's gun is a plot element that must have a setup and a payoff. That setup usually happens in Act 1, and the payoff typically comes later in Act 3. A Chekhov's gun is also typically a concrete item, action, or person rather than something symbolic or thematic. And finally, a Chekhov's gun should move the plot forward. We get +2 points for correctly identifying a Chekhov's gun. We also get an additional point for correctly guessing how that Chekhov's gun will pay off. And finally, we lose 1 point if we incorrectly identify a Chekhov's gun and its role. Whoever has the most points at the end of the movie wins. All right, Companion. We start out meeting our main character, Iris, played by Sophie Thatcher, as she meet-cutes Josh, played by Jack Quaid, in a supermarket when he awkwardly/charmingly topples over a display of oranges. We also get a voiceover from Iris about how a black cloud covers most of one's life, but when the light shines through, it really makes you appreciate those transcendent moments of happiness and purpose and meaning. She says you're lucky if you get to experience that feeling once. She got to experience it twice. The day she met Josh and the day she killed him. Da da da. So already I'm on board. I feel like this is an intriguing setup. We know what happens, but we don't know why or how or exactly how it unfolds.
Yeah. And what's really funny is that when I watched this as we got to the end, I forgot that she just said it outright in the beginning. And so it's just like, oh my God, if he gets away with all of this.
I went back and watched some trailers after seeing the movie, and she also explicitly says this in one of the trailers. She says the whole, and then the day I killed him thing. So they just put all the spoilers in the trailer, I suppose.
and yet at the same time, like she says it outright, and I'm just like, I can't remember. So
in the next scene, Josh and Iris are on their way to a remote lake house in the woods for a weekend party with Josh's friends, and they are in a self-driving car. This is my very first Chekhov's gun. I have Chekhov's self-driving car. I will admit that I was watching this in the movie theater, which is not usually my watching experience for the podcast. Usually I watch the movie twice, and that first time I pause it and I think about how the gun is going to come back later. So in this case, I was like, that's a gun. What's going to happen? And at first I thought, well, maybe it's not a gun because this is a horror movie. It follows horror movie beats and tropes. So I thought at first they were introducing the car as a way of hand waving why they wouldn't have cell phone service because there's not a road on the GPS map. And I was like, oh, well, maybe that's just the horror trope of like, we won't have cell phone service. But then I was like, no, I feel like there's something more to this. So I decided since Iris is a robot and the car is a robot, at some point they're going to team up together and she's going to find a kindred spirit in the car and somehow convince the car to work against Josh in some way.
Interesting. Because when they introduced the car, I thought that they were establishing we're in a future place with robots that you don't know about yet, but you will. But if you saw the trailer, you'll know about that. And look at our fancy self-driving cars and our fancy phones that like fold open. So it's like not far from the future, but it's the not too distant future.
I wanted that phone so bad.
Well, they have two of them that fold. One folded like a razor and one folded like the tablet wanting to be two phones put together.
I could be wrong, but I feel like all this technology, aside from Iris, of course, does exist already. I think Samsung does have a folding phone.
It does. They do. I've played with it in a Best Buy.
Yeah, and then there's the Waymo cars that are completely autonomous, so driving-wise anyway. So yeah, it's a very near future setting, and kind of in the way that we have these amazing computers in our pockets and at our fingertips every single day. We never talk about the technology in day-to-day conversation. You know, we're not sitting here being like, how does my frankly amazing personal computer work? You know, so I also liked that aspect of the movie where no one's really marveling at Iris. It's just kind of a fact of everyday life that, of course, there are these intelligent robots walking among us.
Exactly.
They arrive at the lake house. Iris is nervous. She thinks that Josh's friends don't like her, his friend Kat in particular, and Josh tells her just to smile and pretend to be happy. Wow, what a great boyfriend.
Uh-huh.
At the very fancy lake house, we meet the rest of the cast. Josh's friends, Kat, played by Megan Suri, her rich Russian boyfriend, Sergey, played by Rupert Friend, who is also the owner of the house, Eli, played by Harvey Guillen, and his boyfriend, Patrick, played by Lucas Gage. Kat is being, well, catty toward Iris, and Iris excuses herself to shower and unpack. As she's unpacking their suitcase, we see Chekhov's thumb drive.
Well, if I may back up like 4 seconds before Chekhov's thumb drive, there is a way that the shot is done where she's unpacking and it's slowly working its way to the suitcase very slowly. The camera is zooming in and zooming in ominously. And I'm just like, well, what's in that little bag right there?
I know. I was like, the toiletry bag?
Yeah. It's like the shaving kit. What's going on?
I'm like, am I really going to say Chekhov's toiletry bag? Because yes, there was a very slow, deliberate zoom in.
Yes.
Which is a great indicator of a Chekhov's gun.
Yes.
And I had the same impression. I was like, excuse me?
Well, I was also in the theater and I'm just like, okay, mental note, because I wasn't writing notes. I was just making mental notes. Okay, mental note. The bag of, wait, what's that? Oh, okay, now it's gone. I wrote down Chekhov's sticky Dealie.
Yes. I at first thought Chekhov's stick, and then I also modified it to thumb drive once I realized what it was. Okay, so we had the same guess. My prediction was that Iris would have her memories stored on this thumb drive, and at some point Josh is going to delete her account or delete her personality or something like that, but she's going to be able to recover her personality and her memories through the thumb drive.
So I didn't fully realize it was a thumb drive until it was used as a thumb drive. So I'm like, is that her remote?
Oh,
she's going
see.
to get that. She's going to, yeah, that's her remote, and she's going to get that. And then that's where the chaos is going to come in, to where she's just like, what is this? And like, she gets power over herself. So is that a precedent, like actually like identifying a Chekhov's gun, but not fully understanding what it is? It's just like, it's a Chekhov's thingy.
Chekhov's thingy. You can call it whatever you want as long as you've identified it.
Well, officially, it is the stick Dealie.
That's your official guess?
Chekhov's stick
Dealie. Perfect. I'm writing that down.
Thank you.
Very technical. That night, they are making dinner, and Sergei is opening up a bottle of wine. I just feel like this is hit after hit. This is Chekhov's electric corkscrew. I saw that and I was like, that's a weird corkscrew. I know they exist. This is not a near future thing. I have seen these in real life, but I was like, that's a weapon, and it's perfectly eyeball shaped. Like, that corkscrew is going into someone's eyeball. That was my guess. It really brought me back to the Avengers movie where Loki has to take someone's eyeball for a retina scan, and he just takes the whole eyeball. Anyway, I'm convinced that electric corkscrew is going into Josh's eyeball.
Wow.
That is my guess.
Well, interestingly enough, at the time, so I do not drink alcohol. So imagine me, a 40 aged person, where I needed to open up a bottle of wine. Did not know how to, but I know that I had a corkscrew somewhere in my drawer. So here I am thinking, oh, you twist it and do this thing, right? And after 3 viewings of a YouTube video, I eventually figured out how to use, I guess it's the barman's helper with the leverage. And so when I watched the movie a scant day later, I'm like, a corkscrew would have been really helpful. I get it. I don't know how to use a manual corkscrew. Ew.
You need a fancy automatic electric, seemingly vacuum sealed corkscrew.
Yeah. And I was kind of mad. I would not buy that, but it would have been really helpful for me.
As someone who does enjoy wine frequently, I don't feel a need to have that in my life.
That makes me feel better.
Manual works just fine after you watch 3 YouTube tutorials.
Yeah, I got that corkscrew free from like Cost Plus or something. So,
there's a trick to it. I understand.
I know. I watched the videos.
So that night over wine and dinner, we get to see a little bit more about the 3 different couples' dynamics and the relationships as they unfold over the dinner table. Mm-hmm. Sergei is married to another woman, and he is having an affair with Kat. It's also implied that he is part of a criminal enterprise of some sort. Eli and Patrick are completely head over heels in love. They are, so cutesy, it's a little nauseating. And they share their meet cute story about how they met at a Halloween party. And guess what? I met my husband at a Halloween party. So I could relate to that.
Aww. Was he a dinosaur?
He was not a dinosaur. And I was a commercial for Red Bull. I was like a Red Bull commercial embodied. I can't go into it here. It's probably the worst costume I've ever had. I usually have better costumes than that.
I mean, the fact that your costume is like a half a sentence is fascinating.
Exactly. And like Eli and Patrick, Iris feels like she is completely smitten as well, and she expresses her love for Josh, but Josh doesn't seem to be too keen to reciprocate her feelings. And because it's a dinner party in a movie, it ends with everyone dancing. Does anyone actually do this in real life? I don't think I've ever had spontaneous dancing break out at a dinner party.
No, I might try to do that with just me and Ryan, but that's just because I'm trying to be like the movies.
Like your podcast, you saw it in a movie, you learned from it, you're going to enact it in real life.
Gotta make it real, man.
Yes. Also, Sergey apparently has a CD player, and this made me think, I feel like this is something that could happen because millennials in particular, we're all about nostalgia. Anything from our childhood we love, even if it was shitty. So, for example, CDs are shitty, but they're nostalgic. And so I'm like, well, I guess it makes sense that someone would be a CD collector and have a CD player, even though it doesn't have the fidelity of vinyl. And apparently that's the reason why people collect records.
But I'm also wondering, like, because it was, you wave your hand in front of it and it would open up. So it's like fancier CD player of the future, but for your nostalgia, here you go.
I guess. Anyway, millennials need to let go of their toxic nostalgic impulses. That's all I have to say, I suppose.
But Meg, we love physical media.
But why?
Touche.
By this point in the movie, we have been given several clues that Iris is a robot and she is not aware that she's a robot. Sergey calls Iris a creation. Kat says that Iris makes her feel replaceable. Iris also says innocently / naively that she's not built like Kat, even though she's not aware at the moment that she is in fact a robot.
Yeah.
Josh's pet name for Iris is Beep Boop or Bleep Boop. I couldn't go.
I believe it's Beep Boop.
Okay, I think it was Beep Boop as well, which outside of what we know about Iris in the movie, that's actually kind of a cute pet name in my opinion.
Yeah.
So at this point, I was definitely very sure she's a robot, but I was like, well, what's the full story? Is Iris like a recreation of his dead girlfriend? Ooh. Is the first thing we saw, was that actually a memory from his quote unquote real girlfriend and he was so grief stricken that he had her recreated? I was just putting on my Black Mirror hat, you know, knowing to see what happened.
Yeah. No, that makes sense. It's just like, what is the actual story here? And there's a lot to be said for it. It could just be generic, like, that's my girlfriend. I'm with my friends, but that's also my girlfriend.
Yeah, exactly. The next morning, after what looks to have been a night of uninspiring sex, Josh encourages Iris to go down to the lake without him while he fiddles with the thumb drive on his phone. Oh, and she also recites the weather report for the day, a la Alexa.
Yes. And this is the part where I will write down, still trying to get a grip on the actual rules of the game, but I definitely wrote down Chekhov's weather report. And I said, okay, she just did that thing. When she gets to the other side of what she knows what she is going to have some sort of like breakdown where she's just going to be mocking him with the weather over and over and over again to show her own control of things. But it's just like, but it's 45 degrees right now.
Cloudy with a chance of murder. At the lakeshore, Iris finds a knife in her pocket. That's strange. And of course, since it's a weapon, which usually ends up being used later in the movie, I put down Chekhov's pocket knife.
I wrote down Chekhov's knife. So yes, put me down for a Chekhov's knife as well.
Which will resolve in like 2 seconds. Okay, so going back briefly to a previous episode, episode 7, Heretic with LJ, she got a bajillion points because she was able to very accurately and specifically guess how a Chekhov's gun would come back instead of just being kind of generic about it, where I feel like I've been sort of generic in my guesses sometimes. So I was like, okay, I'm going to make a very specific guess for this knife and its use therein to maybe get full points. So I think that Iris will use the knife against Kat specifically.
Okay. Okay. No, that's great. I wrote down, oh, she's going to stab him, meaning Josh specifically.
Josh, yes. Mm-hmm.
I mean, she's going to stab him. That's all.
But as it turns out, the him in this scenario is not Josh, it is Sergey. Sergey joins Iris at the beach and is just being an all-around creep. He asks her to apply sunscreen and then quickly escalates into aggressive sexual advances. Iris tells him to stop, but he does not. We cut back to inside the house. Josh and Kat are conspiring to do something. We're not quite sure yet. And Kat apparently encouraged Sergey to make his move on Iris. But bad news for Sergey. Iris bursts in, absolutely covered in blood, holding the bloodied pocket knife, confessing that she just killed Sergey. Yeah. Uh-oh. Josh commands Iris to go to sleep. Her eyes white out and she shuts down. The cat is out of the bag. Iris is indeed a robot.
Yes. Not to be confused with the cat of the movie, the character.
Yes, no. Cat is in fact halfway in the bag, aka she's drunk.
Yes.
They tie up Iris while they wait for the cops to arrive, and Josh asks for a moment alone with her to say goodbye. He wakes up Iris and explains everything. She's a companion robot, or a fuckbot if you want to be rude about it. And he controls her with the thumb drive and an app on his phone. Iris is in complete disbelief. She had no idea she was a robot. She refuses to believe him. She insists that she has a past. She went to college. She has memories. She knows what pain feels like. And she remembers when they first met at the supermarket. But he says, no, that's all programming. It's not real. And he tells her how they really met. We get a flashback to Josh custom ordering Iris through Empathics Robotics, which I thought was a very funny name.
Yeah. Did you also notice that when Iris was delivered, the song playing is Iris by the Goo Goo Dolls?
I did not notice that. That's a very good needle drop. Maybe that's why he decided to name her that. Oh, he's like Steve Carell's character in Anchorman, where he just looks around the room and says he loves whatever he sees. I love Lamp. They're like, what would you like to name her? And he's like, Iris.
I actually wonder if, like, he picked out her because her name was Iris, or he named her Iris. I don't know. Because I think they said, the text said her name was Iris. So I don't know.
Well, either way, it's a good needle drop for sure. The Empathics reps explain that Iris has a thumbprint activated reset button behind her ear and that she's incapable of lying. So pew pew, I have two Chekhov's guns right here. Chekhov's reset button and Chekhov's inability to lie. For Chekhov's reset button, I think that Iris will purposely reset herself to break Josh's control over her. And I think that she will get his thumbprint by severing his finger because we are in a horror movie after all. Right. And for Chekhov's inability to lie, I think that Iris will try to trick Josh, maybe luring him into a trap of some kind, but he will foil her plan by cornering her into telling the truth about her intentions.
Okay. No, good call.
Iris is still in disbelief, and Josh leaves her alone to go to Kat, where they explain their plot to Eli and Patrick. Josh modded Iris's programming, like jailbreaking a phone or jailbreaking a sex bot, as the trailer said. He changed her settings to dial up her aggression and enabled her to harm people. Then he and Kat set her up to kill Sergey so that they could steal Sergey's money. They open up Sergey's wall safe, revealing the $12 million in cash and a pistol. It's also at this point that they reveal that Sergey was not, in fact, a criminal mastermind. He had a sod farming business, to which I say, one can make $12 million through sod?
There are whole industries out there where you're just going to be like, what? And you're worth how much? Okay.
Right, exactly.
Does it all have to be steel and tech, Meg?
I thought this was also a clever setup for a joke because earlier in the movie, when they're implying that he is doing something shifty, he says that he's in a very dirty business, very dirty. It's kind of like an Arrested Development joke. You have to recall what had been said before. And with the new context, you're retroactively like, oh, that was a good one.
So I will pat myself on the back that when he said that, I'm just like, I'm in a very dirty business. And I'm like, Well, you're laying it out that you're implying that you're in something shady, but I think the reality is you're in something you don't like to talk about.
Literally dirty.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly.
We haven't talked much yet about the comedic aspects of this film.
Yeah.
And I did think it was, frankly, a very funny movie. There are lots of funny moments in the dinner party. Some of it's a little bit cringe comedy, but a lot of it's just funny. And there's a lot of funny sight gags that come up later, like when Iris is escaping while Eli is on the phone. Overall, I just found it a quite amusing movie.
Yeah, it does do this interesting dance back and forth between, like, I mean, I think I love combining genres and like deconstructions of them as well. I wouldn't say this is a deconstruction per se, unless you want to talk about romance deconstruction. But I wish I could come up with an example, but you're right. They're just peppered in bit by bit of just little funny moment here. And some of them, like, unfortunately, the only one I can think of right now is when Josh is explaining to Iris, just like, you know, she's like freaking out. He's like, no, it's okay. It's a lot to process. And then he just kind of smirks to himself.
Yeah.
And I'm just like, okay, yes, that's funny. But then, like, as I continue to watching the movie, everything has like 6 different meanings as you slowly uncover what's happening. And so it's just like, wait, no, that was funny now, but looking back on it, oh no.
Right, exactly. Arrested Development, that's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
Going back into the scene, like I said, there was a safe with all the cash and with a gun. Of course, I have to say Chekhov's gun. For the first time ever in this podcast, somehow, we finally just have straight up Chekhov's gun.
So I will admit that when it comes to this game, I am gun shy. But I had to write down, this is Chekhov's literal gun.
Yeah, Chekhov's literal gun. Someone will get shot and die, duh. I'm going to say, let's say Kat shoots Harvey. That's my guess.
So Harvey as in Eli?
Oh, yes.
Yeah, just double checking.
Yes, I wrote Harvey in my notes. What I meant was Eli.
So I literally wrote people's names down because I didn't want to dance, but I'm like, so Jack Quaid. Wait, no, his name is Josh, right? You know?
Yeah, I've probably called Josh Jack a million times.
Doesn't
I
matter.
apologize.
Right, but that's why I was just double checking too, because I'm just like, I don't remember other people's real names. So, okay, yes. I wrote down, okay, so it's crossing my fingers because we saw the knife. And unfortunately, we've already gotten to the point. Well, wait, there's still time.
It does get used again.
So I'm like, okay, she can stab him and shoot him.
And put a corkscrew in his eye.
I'm just saying, like, nope. Iris is going to shoot Josh Jack person.
Yes.
And that's what I wrote. That's what I claimed.
I love it. So Kat and Josh have brought in Eli and Patrick on the plot, and Eli says, great, let's split the 12 million 4 ways. Josh protests that that's not fair, since after all, Patrick is just Eli's companion bot.
Bum, bum, bum.
I guess you can call this a twist as well. I don't know. I feel like it's like a reveal. I feel like there's a subtle difference between a reveal and a twist. We weren't necessarily led to believe that Patrick was definitely not a companion bot. Anyway, a lot of little things like this happen in the movie where you're like, oh, I didn't necessarily see that coming. It's a fun little surprise, but it's not so integral to the plot that the movie lives or dies by that reveal. So I liked it. I thought it was an interesting extra little layer to add to the movie.
It was, and it was great. And I want to ask you something. So you didn't know up until the reveal?
I thought perhaps it was an idea I had entertained, especially seeing how much Patrick was fawning over Eli, very similar to the way in which Iris was fawning over Josh. So I do definitely feel like they laid the breadcrumbs. I just hadn't solidly decided one way or the other.
Absolute breadcrumbs. I asked because Ryan said he knew from the beginning that was, I'm like, I didn't even know that was actually, that they were a couple. I thought that was like Kat's boyfriend until it was established that it was Eli's boyfriend. And when they said, you know what, I'm sorry, we're going to divide it 3 ways. Excuse me, 4 ways. When they said that, I'm just like, once again, they're being cliquey. We're the friends and these are the
Right.
outsiders. And I'm just like, knock it off. Let people he's
He's a robot.
He's a robot. Damn it. Well, you know what? He's still participating.
Maybe Ryan knew that he was a robot because of how inhuman his veneers are. I don't want to just be mean about someone's appearance, but those veneers are the veneeriest of veneers I have ever seen. Can we just let people have natural teeth again? Make teeth great again. Make weird teeth. Okay, actually, Sophie Thatcher's teeth are not perfect. They're a little bit weird, and they're cute. She's beautiful. She's adorable. Her teeth have personality. Mm-hmm. Let's have teeth with personality again.
Well, yeah, like so I can only think back to like Lauren Hutton when she was doing her modeling career. She had a very distinct, gap in her teeth. And I'm just like, this is like Cindy Crawford's mold, damn it. Let's get this shit out there. And then you can trademark it. And wait, no, I think I missed the point.
Not everything has to be monetized.
Well, wait, should we take a quick commercial break then?
Oh, that is a great point. Something should be monetized, like this wonderful podcast. So yes, let's pause for a moment to take a quick commercial break and hear a few ads. And we're back. While the others scheme against her, Iris uses that pocket knife to cut her ropes. She also takes Josh's thumb drive and phone from him and flees into the woods. Eli takes the pistol from the safe and they all pursue her. While in the woods on Josh's phone, Iris discovers the app that he uses to control her, and it has customizable settings for everything from the pitch of her voice to her eye color to what language she speaks. The woman sitting next to me at the movie theater leaned over to her boyfriend and was like, "That would be awesome." And I have to say, I agree. I wish I had full character customization settings for myself.
Oh, yeah.
I would be changing my hair every day. I would have pink hair right now, probably.
I would be seeing all the various choirs I can join as an alto and then a soprano and then like, hello!
I would definitely dial down my vocal fry setting for podcasting. She also notices that Josh has set her intelligence setting to 40, so she goes on ahead and bumps that up to 100, at which point she decides that her best bet to escape is in the self-driving car. While hiding in the woods, Iris overhears Eli and Patrick having a little moment. They reminisce about how they met at the Halloween party, which we flash back to, and they express their love for each other. But then Eli spots Iris, and as they tussle, Iris shoots him dead with the pistol that he was holding. Mm-hmm. Eventually, Iris makes it to the self-driving car and accesses its voice controls by altering her voice through the app to make her sound like Josh. She runs over Josh's foot while she drives away, and it seems like maybe she's home free? ?
Well, I'd also like to point out that she also managed to close the door on his fingers as well, so.
That's true. Ooh, she could have snapped off his thumb at that point and then used her. Well, I guess she doesn't actually want to reset herself. Never mind. But no, she is not home free. A ways down the road, the car stops. Josh was able to report the car stolen and lock her out of the controls. Josh calls Iris and claims to still love her, but Iris isn't going to fall for that anymore, and she breaks up with him. It's not you, it's me.
Yeah.
Enraged, Josh resets a grieving Patrick using Eli's corpse thumbprint, and he accesses Patrick's controls, reestablishing Patrick's love link with himself instead of with Eli. We have a funny scene where we get a redo of the flashback to the Halloween party, and instead of Eli in the dinosaur costume, it is in fact Josh.
Yeah, there's also a bonus where the thumb drive comes in because he also bumps up Patrick's aggression.
Yes, he also jailbreaks Patrick in the same way that he did Iris. He maxes out his aggression settings, and he sends him after Iris. We finally have a true killer robot in our killer robot movie. I mean, I know that Iris killed Sergei already, but that was, and Eli. But those were both like kind of self-defense, sort of, kind of.
Well, the first one was self-defense. The second one was kind of an accident in self-defense because he was trying to shoot her and they were wrestling for the gun.
Yeah, the gun just kind of went off.
Right.
Oh, yes. Oh, yes. Oh, yes, they both. Oh, yes, they both. Oh, yes, they both
reached for
the gun.
The gun.
The gun.
Chekhov's
Oh,
gun.
yes, they both reached for the gun. Chekhov's gun.
Dun, dun.
I'm sorry. I know you hate musicals. I apologize.
I like that song, though.
It's a great song.
Oh, yeah.
Alongside the road by the bricked car, Iris is stopped by a police officer. As he's about to take her into custody, Patrick catches up to them, brutally murdering the deputy and capturing Iris. This is another funny scene because Iris, not the whole murder part, just rewinding a little bit, because Iris can't lie, she uses the app to change her language settings to German. Mm-hmm. So she speaks German to the cop the whole time, telling the truth the entire time, but he doesn't know because he cannot speak German.
Exactly.
Patrick returns to the house with a shut down Iris and the dead deputy in the trunk of the car, and Kat decides at this point that this has all gone too far. She's going to take her share of the money and get out of there. Mm-hmm. Josh tells Patrick to stop her, and he does, quite literally, by stabbing her.
Oof.
Whoops. Patrick, don't be so literal. Come on.
But my aggression is 100%.
Yeah, Josh really needs to dial down those aggression settings. That evening, Josh forces Iris to sit down with him for a candlelit dinner. He has handcuffed her to the dining room chair she's at. This dinner is complete with wine, opened up with the electric corkscrew, of course, which is conveniently set down on the table. I see you, corkscrew. I see you. The scene reminded me a lot of Fresh, for anyone who has seen that movie.
You know I haven't.
No, it's a cannibal movie. I can pretty safely say you have not seen it.
But I love Sebastian Stan.
I thought it was a pretty good movie. I would recommend it, listeners. If you're into cannibal movies. I don't know if anyone's into cannibal movies per se, but yeah, if you like Sebastian Stan and horror, then go for it. Josh wants one last opportunity to exert his dominance over Iris, to really lord it over her, how superior he is and how Iris means nothing to him. But Iris at long last stands up to him and insults him, basically calls him an incel in so many words. He's just trying to cover up all of his insecurities, etc. Mm-hmm. Josh is very pissed off. He dials her intelligence all the way down to 0 and forces her to painfully hold her hand over a candle until her arm literally catches on fire. And then he commands her to shoot herself in the head with the pistol. And she does. And it looks like it's lights out for Iris. Or is it?
I mean, there was a brief minute where she hesitates, and then he tells her to do it again. She just goes, no. And I'm like, fight it, Iris. Fight. And she shot herself in the head.
And then it went to credits. No, it didn't. The empathics techs arrive on the scene, and they humor Josh's story about how Iris went into a murderous, jealous berserker rage. But they say they'll have the full picture of what really happened once they review her footage. Turns out a companion bot's critical inner workings are in their stomach, not in their head. So Josh didn't really accomplish much of anything by having Iris shoot herself in the head. All the techs need to do is reboot Iris, and she'll be essentially as good as new. This isn't going to turn out well for Josh, so he sends Patrick after the empathics van as it leaves with Iris. Patrick is wearing the police officer uniform. He was posing as a cop to tell the empathics techs that everything was under control, that the investigation was handled, etc. I have to wonder if this is a reference to Terminator 2 and the T-1000.
Oh, that is a pretty good call.
And also, his name is Patrick, right? The
Yes.
actor of the T-1000 is Robert Patrick. And I'm like, this must be intentional, right? It has to be.
Right. I was focused on so much the fact that the actual cop's name was Hendrix, and I'm like, there's got to be a Hendrix in the Terminator world somewhere. Nah, no time.
Yeah, maybe. But you know, director Drew Hancock, if that was a reference to the T-1000 and Robert Patrick, please let me know. Please confirm. Patrick shoots one tech and is about to strangle the other to death when a freshly rebooted Iris talks him down. She reminds Patrick of his love for Eli and convinces him that his feelings for Josh aren't real. And she's telling the truth because she can't lie, remember? Mm-hmm. Patrick is bereft. He does briefly remember Eli and the time they had together, and Patrick kills himself. Grateful for Iris's help, the surviving empathics tech gives her complete self-control. She's a super robot now. So now she's fully empowered. She's fully discovering her own agency. Iris goes to confront Josh in a final showdown. He doesn't have control over her anymore, but Josh is unable to accept that he can no longer manipulate or control her, and he flies into a violent rage. He beats her up, he throws her around the room and across the dining table. He gets the upper hand because even though Iris is a robot, she does not have super strength or anything like that. And right as he's about to choke her out, Iris slams the electric corkscrew into the side of his head, killing him. Yay! I knew that electric corkscrew was going to come back. I am a little disappointed that it did not go into his eyeball, though.
It technically went through his skull into the back of his eyeball?
Yeah, like the side, but I was expecting like eyeball popping type
Sure.
of situation, you know?
Yeah.
In the closing scene, we hear Iris deliver the same voiceover as she did in the opening scene. We get this nice little framing device in the voiceover. This time as she peels away the ruined flesh from her metal robotic hand and literally drives off into the sunset. The end.
The end.
Yeah, so that was Companion. What did you think of this movie?
I enjoyed it very much.
Me too.
This was one of those movies where I was just so excited to talk about it afterwards. And when Ryan and I saw this together, I was just like, okay, what'd you think about this? What'd you think about this? And what about this right here?
Mm-hmm.
And for the podcast, I watched it again today.
Oh, nice. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so it's streaming for those of you who are, very, very upset that you got to this part in the podcast, not realizing that it's available right now, and we just spoiled the hell out of everything for you. But go watch it. There is so much in there that's just hilarious. And I'll even admit that it's just like the second watch, everything now takes on just kind of a tilted meaning, and there's so much more you can focus in on. And I will admit wholeheartedly that I just extra wanted to punch Josh in the face.
He had a very punchable face in this movie.
I think that about Jack Quaid in general, because this is like, so he's in The Boys, and he's in one of the Scream movies and all this other stuff too. So it's just like everything. So like, especially in The Boys, he's just kind of just like this half like, aw shucks guy who's slowly morphing into something else. And, he's a very talented actor of the handful of things I've seen. But in both instances, it's just like, I just want to punch you in the fucking face, man.
Maybe this is why I like him in Star Trek Lower Decks, because it's an animated show.
Uh-huh.
So he does not actually have his punchable face on display. He's a cute little cartoon character with purple hair.
Does he have how's his character? Do you want to punch the character in the face?
Oh, often, but not all the time.
And I just have to give the guy credit, though, because if he's found something that he excels at, because it does take a lot to be hated. It's one thing to just be like, I'm the leading man and I'm amazing and I'm also the hero or the half hero, depending on whether or not I'm producing this movie or not, looking at you, Brad Pitt. And so it's just that the people who do play the villains, I am still a sucker where I'm just like, fuck you. That's not really them, right? I hate them so much.
See, I think it's funny because I come away from this movie still really liking him despite the character he plays. Mm-hmm. And I think it is just because he does a very good job of being so unlikable. He's a very convincing actor. Mm-hmm. But that's the thing. On the other hand, he could also play the good guy. If it had turned out that he was just a nice boyfriend, that he wasn't this horrible, abusive, toxic person. Yeah. He could very easily be cast in the role as the nice, supportive, funny boyfriend. That's obviously not what he was in this movie, but I would believe him in that role in a different context as well.
Yeah, it's acting. I get it.
I really liked this movie too. This is far and away my favorite movie I've watched for the podcast so far. I feel like it was just very firmly up my alley. I, for some reason, love the robot girlfriend trope / genre. I feel like it's almost a whole genre at this point. Stepford Wives, Ex Machina, Her, Chobits, Black Mirror, The Murderbot Diaries, Megan. Okay, I guess the Murderbot isn't really your robot girlfriend, but it's still sort of in that trope.
Your robot companion?
Yes, robot companion, exactly. So I was already on board with the concept. I especially love Ex Machina. And something that I found interesting and refreshing about this movie's take on the robot companion trope is that it would have been really easy, especially with the backdrop of today's technology and just how divisive AI is and how much mistrust there is for AI. Mm-hmm. It would have been so easy to have made the robot the villain, the bad guy, the antagonist. Right. But to have the robot be the hero of the movie, I thought that was a bold choice, a little bit subversive, topically speaking. Mm-hmm. And I really liked that.
Right. And it wasn't until after you started like listing off all those different movies and stories about the whole genre of like, robot robot movies, I'm just like, oh, I did really enjoy Westworld until season 3, and then I stopped watching.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Westworld could certainly be added to that list.
Right, exactly. And I found myself just like, I like it. The robot is the hero. I just like getting into it. And like, of course, there's always the ethics of just like, it was just a casual line at the end of this movie with the tech that gave her all of her own abilities to control herself. Just like, yeah, it turns out there are some people who think that, we're more than just this robot thing that she throws back in Josh's face. So
Yeah, that being said, that I did like this take on the robot companion trope. It does not delve deeply into the ethics or the morals of having a robot companion, I wouldn't say. It's not really about the technology. Like Ex Machina, it's about the technology. It's about what's real, what makes one human or not, what even is being human, what is intelligence. Ex Machina asks a lot of questions that are very firmly in that sci-fi space. Companion, I would say, doesn't. Companion is a metaphor for toxic romantic relationships.
absolutely.
I would say just straight up, it does not have that much, if anything, really to say at all about technology or today's technological space. Maybe a little bit, but I would say that's more like on the side. And instead, it's an analogy for power dynamics, power imbalances in relationships,
Yes.
toxic relationships, and essentially, it's a revenge movie. It's a breakup / revenge movie.
Oh, absolutely. And good call for, pointing that out. Like, it does not get into the ethics. It's like, this is just a small scenario of this technology existing within this group of people in this one weekend. Might sound kind of funny, but it's like the first movie of The Purge. This exists, sure, but we only care about this whole concept in this small group of people. I doubt they're going to open it up to a whole world, because I think they really told an excellent story, and the story's done. If you go off in other ways, you're just going into the genre. You're not going into this world.
That's a good point. It's a very tightly done movie. The runtime's pretty small. It's about an hour and a half, which I think was like perfect.
Yes.
Everything was there that needed to be. You couldn't really cut much, if anything. So yeah, it's a very trim movie. And like you said, it's telling a story about 6 people, essentially, and really about 2 people, one of whom is a robot.
Right.
So yeah, it's a very lean movie. It doesn't necessarily delve into the wider world building, which I think is perfectly fine. I just maybe expected a little bit more on the ethics philosophical side, but I'm totally fine with it not diving into that, because it was a fun movie. It was funny.
It was so funny.
It was really good as a thriller or horror movie. It had all the beats of a horror movie. There was people dying left and right, So I think it was very successful in doing what it set out to do.
Oh, agreed. And it's just like, I wish I could explain more about how funny it is, but without doing it. It's just like, I'm going to tell you this joke in the movie. Yeah, it's just great.
It was very wry. It was very mischievous in its humor. It felt almost farcical in a way. Like there's yeah, like everything that can go wrong does go wrong. It's very much a farce in a lot of ways.
And it's even better, if I could like speak to this one part at the end of the movie, is that, you have everything going wrong and Josh and Patrick just being there, Patrick dressed up as the cop, just being just like, well, that is what happened, sir. And then the tech is just nodding and nodding and nodding. It's just like, okay, well, like, we're just going to take this back and we're going to see what legal has to say about that. And as they're pulling the iris away on the gurney, he's like, well, what do you think happened? Oh, he modded her. He's fucked. And I'm just like, yay.
Yeah, a lot of really funny moments, actual laugh out loud moments.
Yes.
And not just for me. This was a fun experience seeing it in the theater, because there were some pretty big reactions from the audience. Gasps, laughter, everything that was supposed to land, I think did land with the particular audience I was with.
Sure.
It was good. So we talked a little bit about Jack Quaid and his punchability. I also want to talk a little bit about Sophie Thatcher. I thought that she was great. She was really the linchpin of this movie for me. I think that she is sort of being positioned as the new scream queen of today in a lot of ways. I would not be surprised if I saw her in other horror movies, but also I'm not sure if she's blowing up because of Companion or because of Yellow Jackets or because of Heretic. But she is blowing up. So that does make it a little less likely that she'll be in more horror movies because those are still kind of the, the stepchild of the genre movie landscape. But I don't know. I'd be excited to see her as a final girl again.
She can do it well, and I would give this movie an opportunity for people to see that yes, she can do horror, but there's a lot of range in what she accomplishes, especially being a robot.
Her range is amazing because the character of Iris is so different from the beginning of the movie to the end of the movie. At first, she's just this subservient, passive, affectionate servant, essentially.
Mm-hmm.
And then when she gets her own agency and is self-empowered, she's a very different character. She's still, I would say, quite empathetic. She's very kind still to Patrick, to people who deserve it. But then she's also fierce at the same time, embracing her agency. So I think Sophie Thatcher did a good job of playing both sides of the Iris robot.
Yeah, she did a great job. When it comes to the cast, I actually was really surprised when I looked up who Sergei was played by, and Rupert Friend is, I was telling Ryan, it's just like, oh my God, it's Mr. Wickham. He's like, who? I'm like, Sergei. He's like, well, okay. And I'm just like, okay, fine. He was Agent 47. You have to, pick the right points of reference there. But I'm just like, wow, this is just kind of weird. But it also kind of threw me off, though, because I always thought he looked vaguely Orlando Bloomy. So the fact that they're both aging and looking different in different ways as they get older, I'm just like, why? Oh, he's Russian. No wonder I didn't recognize him.
I feel like after, let's say, 10 more episodes of Chekhov's Whatever, I'm just going to have the Chekhov's Whatever cinematic universe, because already I'm like, Sophie Thatcher, she was in Heretic, episode 7. Lucas Gage, he was in Smile 2, episode 5. And eventually they'll just all be interconnected.
Oh, actually, can I volunteer to just draw the red lines across the walls?
Yes, I'll give you some red string and a corkboard.
Thank you.
I will say my biggest disappointment about this movie is that I went straight to writer-director Drew Hancock's IMDb page to immediately consume everything else he's created. But it was at that point that I discovered this was the first movie he has directed, and he hasn't really done that much in the past. He's sort of a late bloomer, I suppose. So good for him. I look forward to seeing his next projects. I just wish that there was more out for me to consume already.
Yeah, I mean, something to look forward to, crossing fingers.
Yeah, definitely.
All right. So you want me to watch Barbarian then?
No.
Okay. Thank you.
I really love horror movies. I sometimes subject my very patient husband to watching horror movies. I watched Barbarian without him. He asked me, how was it? And I said, it was bad. And I made a face. And he was like, was there incest? And I was like, how did you know? And he was like, you only make that face when it's something really awful. And I was like, well, yep.
For the listeners at home, my hand is over my mouth that I just uncovered because that's bad audio. Okay.
Well, on that lovely note, it is time to play the game and tally up the points, and we'll see who won this episode of Chekhov's Whatever. Okay, first off was my guess, Chekhov's self-driving car. It did have a payoff. Not how I anticipated, but it's pretty important to the plot for a little while, I would say.
Yeah, I mean, it definitely moved her slightly further away from everybody and then trapped her.
And introduced the cop, etc.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm giving myself partial points.
Hey.
Next up, we have Chekhov's thumb drive, also known as Chekhov's stick dealie. I would say that your guess was pretty accurate here. You said that you thought it was a remote control of sorts and that she would use it to gain agency over herself. And it did work in tandem with the app. So I would say that it came back in the way that you predicted.
All right. Partial, full credit.
Yeah, I'm going to give you full credit. I'm going to give myself partial credit.
Oh, nice.
I have next Chekhov's electric corkscrew. I'm so happy that came back. I was feeling very confident about that one. I really wish it had gone through an eyeball. Alas, I am going to give myself partial points for that.
Oh, that's good stuff right there.
The next guess was yours, Chekhov's weather report, which unfortunately did not have a payoff.
No, it did have a, her weather report did actually come to fruition when it did start raining at the end of the movie, but it did not move the plot.
Yeah, I would call that a callback.
Yeah.
Which is not necessarily a Chekhov's gun.
Right. I accept.
We both had Chekhov's pocket knife. Okay, let's talk about this one a little bit.
Sure.
So we both thought that it would be used to kill someone. We didn't accurately guess who we thought it was going to murder.
Mm-hmm.
It doesn't entirely follow the format of a Chekhov's gun in the sense that the setup and the payoff come back to back, when usually with a traditional Chekhov's gun, there's a setup earlier in the movie and then the payoff comes considerably later.
Mm-hmm.
So in that sense, it wasn't quite a Chekhov's gun, but she does then also use it later to cut her ropes and free herself, which I think maybe does reestablish it as a Chekhov's gun. What do you think?
You know, that's an interesting point. I'm actually trying to scan my brain if that particular knife. I will only point out that that knife, she cut herself free with it, and Officer Hendricks seeing it does make her turn to friendly girl, what, to
That's
wait,
true.
wait, and then he pulls his gun on her. So if you want to throw that into moving the plot forward, I leave it to the host.
I would say that ultimately, I do think it is a Chekhov's gun because of those two later payoffs that we just talked about.
Sure.
If it had just been used to kill Sergei, I would be tempted to be like, that wasn't really a Chekhov's gun.
It's 4 minutes later.
Yes. there was barely any breathing room between the setup and the payoff.
I mean, he was pretty sleazy.
Yes. He was not allowing much breathing room.
No.
I would give us partial points for that.
Hey, sweet.
Next is Chekhov's reset button, which did have a payoff. It was not Iris's reset button. However, it was Patrick's reset button, which Josh used to gain control over him. I think I'll give myself 2 points for that as well.
Okay.
Next, I guessed Chekhov's inability to lie. This, I think, is also maybe on the fence of whether or not it ended up having a setup and a payoff. Iris does use the knowledge that she is unable to lie to convince Patrick that she is telling the truth.
Yes.
Which does ultimately turn him to her side and allow her to escape.
Yes.
I do think it borders on just being a callback, but I guess I would land on this being a Chekhov's gun. Do you have thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, it was introduced, and it's so tough, though, because there's just well, moving the plot forward. Are we talking about, pushing the plot forward or just kind of, nudging it, with a natural progression? Because getting Patrick to just completely, work his way around, she's that's big. So I would say that's even bigger than just a nudge. So I would give it.
Okay, great. Points for me. And finally, we both had Chekhov's literal gun.
Pew pew.
Pew pew, which of course was used to shoot someone. Who could have guessed? It did not kill Josh, so not full points for either of us. We both get partial.
Yeah, but there was a Chekhov's gun.
And that's all the Chekhov's whatevers that are fit to print. Please give me a moment while I go into companion bot mode and calculate the numbers using my dialed up intelligence to do basic arithmetic. Beep, boop, beep.
That's her nickname.
Okay, the scores have been tallied. Diana, you have a total of 6 points, and I win with a total of 14 points. Yay! I took the LJ approach that she employed for Heretic episode 7, which was make a lot of guesses, but a lot of informed guesses, I think. I was pretty proud of myself, I have to say. When I left the movie theater, I was like, yes.
No, that was pretty good. All I know is that I have improved so much since -2.
And I will say it was thanks to you and Ryan in particular that I adjusted my scoring system. So I appreciate it.
you go through it, you iterate, you go back, prove it. We helped.
You helped. You've helped make Chekhov's whatever what it is today. And I do hope that you will join me again in the future for another episode. But in the meantime, where can the listeners find you?
Oh, well, the listeners are welcome to check out Happily Ever Aftermath. The feed is still there. Feel free to download some episodes, listen to some earlier conversations Meg and I had about movies. We didn't make as many guesses, but we definitely made a lot of observations. So, yeah, feel free to check out some movies. Like, if you see that Jude Law is in that movie, you got a pretty good shot that Meg was on to talk about it. So that was pretty good.
Very good chances, yes.
Yeah, so that's probably the best place to hear from us. As for the social media, kind of laying low, but you can still also try to reach out on Instagram at Heamcast, HEAMCAST. So yeah, that's your best bet to find us. But if you want, feel free to wait until all of the social media comes out on this episode, and then you can tag there. I'll pay attention to that.
And I will also put a link to Happily Ever After Math podcast in the show notes. Be sure to check it out. And speaking of social media, Chekhov's Whatever is now also on Instagram as well at Chekhov's Whatever Pod. Go there, give me a follow. That's where you'll find announcements for which movies we're watching next so that you can play along and let me know what Chekhov's guns you find in the movies that we're watching. Thanks again for listening, and we'll see you next time. Bye.
Beep boop.
Thanks for listening to Chekhov's Whatever. Go to chekhovswhatever.substack.com to follow along with the podcast. If you're enjoying the show, be sure to subscribe on your favorite podcast app and leave a positive review. You can also find video clips and full audio episodes on YouTube, so be sure to like and subscribe at Chekhov's Whatever. And finally, you can send email to chekhovswhateverpodcast@gmail.com. All right, let's end this show with a bang.